Hello and welcome to Upstack America's Oracle EBS Financials Functional Training. My name is Bob and I'm the lead senior consultant for Upstack America. And with me today I have Victor, who is also a senior consultant. And today we are handling General Ledger Lesson 33. And Victor, please walk us through.
Thank you, Bob. Welcome to Lesson 33 of Financials Functional Training. We are still on the topic of consolidation, and in this lesson we are going to look at the topic of chart of accounts mapping. So we already mentioned this concept of chart of accounts mapping in our previous lesson, and we said that we have two types of chart of accounts mapping. We have account rules and we have segment rules. And in this lesson, we are going to look at each of them in detail and how they are implemented during consolidation. So chart of accounts mapping, it links the two chart of accounts between the subsidiary and the parent between which you're doing consolidation. And we have, when we're doing consolidation, we have to tell Oracle how the accounts in the subsidiary are going to be converted to accounts in the parent, because they have different chart of accounts and hence different segments. So let's start with account rules, and we are going to use our example that we're using in implementation, where we have this is the parent, which belongs to Maskani, and this is the subsidiary which belongs to Getao Enterprises. So when we are doing account rules mapping, it's pretty straightforward. What we tell Oracle is that we look at each combination in the subsidiary, and then we tell the system what that combination or account is going to be converted to in the parent. Okay, so if we have, for example, this combination here, account, this cash account for company one in the subsidiary, then if we want this account to be converted to this account here, this cash account in the parent company, we go and enter and tell Oracle that this combination here will be converted to this combination in the parent company. And so we do that for each and every combination that we want to do the mapping for. So this method is easy and it is difficult at the same time. Why? Because it doesn't make sense if you have hundreds of combinations. So it means you have to enter data for all those combinations. Now, of course, when we're doing account rules, the mapping can be one-to-one or it can be many-to-one. So what do I mean? So we can tell Oracle that, for example, we want this first account combination to be converted to this one here in the parent. Okay. We can also tell Oracle that we want these two account combinations here in the subsidiary to be converted to this single account here in the parent. Okay, so it can be one-to-one or it can be many-to-one. So it just depends on the combinations that you have or the values that you have in either segment, the subsidiary and the parent. But then again, as I said, account rules, it can be time consuming, because if you have hundreds of combinations or many combinations, then it will take a lot of time to enter the rules for each and every account. Okay, but in terms of implementation, that is how it's done. You enter the account from the subsidiary and you specify the account in the parent ledger to which you want it to be mapped. So This screen here is basically a summary of what I've just said. So for account rules, you map each account combination in the subsidiary to the appropriate target account in the parent ledger, okay, or chart of accounts. And as we said, multiple accounts from the source, they can go to a single account, or it can just be one-to-one. We are going to talk about segment rules also, but just so you know that account rules, they override segment rules, which means we're going to see how we do segment rules. But if you do both account rules and segment rules in your combination, then the account rules will take precedence over the segment rules. And as we said, account rules, they can be time consuming if there are a lot of combinations that you have to enter. Okay, so that's it for account rules. And we are going to go to the system later, but this is the navigation when you want to create the chart of accounts mapping with account rules. Okay, now let's talk about segment rules. So segment rules, they specify rules of how values in subsidiary segments will be converted in corresponding segments in the parent company or in the parent chart of accounts. Okay, and we usually create. You have to create the number of rules you create should be equal to the number of segments in the parent company. Okay, so in our case, we have 7. Okay, we have 7 segments in our parent chart of accounts. So the number of segment rules that we will specify has to be equal to the number of segments that we have here. Why? Because we have to tell Oracle. So because we are transferring data from the subsidiary to the parent, then whatever we transfer, it has to fit the code combinations in the chart of accounts for the parent company. So the combinations or the account combinations here are made up of 7 values. So whatever comes here, it has to fit that rule, if I may call it that. So the number of segment rules we create will be equal to the number of segments in the parent company. Now, I've just remembered something that I wanted to talk about here, and let me go back to the account rules. So, for the account rules, it's the same example, right? So we have 7 segments here, and we also have, 3 segments in the subsidiary. Okay. So the assumption is, when we are doing this example, is that the segment here, the last segment here is the location segment in our subsidiary, or the project segment in our subsidiary. Okay, it's supposed to be location. I changed that. But we have other segments. Okay, so the assumption here is that the parent company is not interested in the location level. It's supposed to be location, not project, but it doesn't matter. So the parent company is not interested in these details, okay, for the location. So what do we do when we are entering the account rules? When we specify the accounts in the mapping, we will just put in the account rules the default, okay, the default value. Remember, we have default value in our value sets for Maskani. So what we are telling Oracle is that for this account, map it to to this account, and then we enter the default for the rest of the segments for which we do not have information from the subsidiary. Okay, so that's just what I wanted to clarify. That's the assumption that we are making, and we will see how we do that when it comes to segment rules. Okay, so like we said, the number of rules should be equal to the number of segments in the parent company. So we have to create rules for each segment. So now, for example, let's say we want to create the segment rules for this first segment, for the company and the corresponding corporation segment in the subsidiary. What are we going to do in Oracle? What we are basically telling Oracle is that we want this company, the Gitao hardware, for example, which is 01 in the subsidiary, we want it to be converted to this in the parent company. Remember, I said in the previous lesson that we have to create these companies here in the parent chart of accounts, or in this value set, so that we can map the values from the subsidiary to them, and we don't have to mix up that data from with the already existing one from Maskani developers and Maskani property. Okay, so when we are doing segment rules chart of accounts mapping, we tell Oracle that if you detect Gitao hardware in the subsidiary which is 01, then it is converted to Gitao hardware in the parent, which we will give a value that fits the rules of this value set. So for example, this will be 003. So if you see 01 in the subsidiary, then it is converted to 003 in the parent. In the same way, if you see Gitao builders, which we say is 02, it will be converted to 004 in the parent. Okay, and so on and so forth. We can also do many to one kind of mapping for this segment. So we can say maybe, for example, we say that these two are related. Okay, let's say that maybe it's the same kind of business, for example. Then we can, and we don't mind how them, like the information being together. So we can tell Oracle that we want these two to be mapped to a single company in the parent. Okay, so let's take a small break. So we can do one-to-one, or we can do many-to-one as the client will see fit, or as the client requires. Okay, so what we call that kind of mapping in segment rules is roll-up. Okay, so these are the three types of segment rules that we can use. We have roll-up, and we have the single value rule, and we have the copy value from rule. Okay, so what we are going to do in our case, for the company segment, we're going to use a roll-up rule. So we're going to roll up these values in the subsidiary to the values that we have in the parent company. Okay, and it's called, it's a roll-up because you can have that a many-to-one relationship. So you roll them up to a single value or something like that. So next we move to the account segment. Okay, now for the account segment, we will also use the roll-up rule. So These accounts here, they can be different from the ones that we have in the parent company. So you'll go, when you're entering your segment rules, you tell Oracle that if you see account 1000, which is cash, here in the subsidiary, then it is converted to account 1000 also in the parent company. Okay. And if we have maybe an account for vehicles in the subsidiary, which is a fixed asset, and we don't have an account in the parent company for vehicles, then we can map these vehicles to a fixed asset account which we have in the parent. Okay. And we have maybe other types of fixed assets here. Maybe we have computers or stuff like that, and we don't have those accounts here, but we have a fixed asset account. Then we can map those ones. We can tell Oracle that we want you to convert those accounts to that single account in the parent. So that's just an example. So for these two segments, we are going to use roll-up rules. Okay. Now, when we come to this third segment, the location here, we'll say the parent company is not interested in this information here. Okay. So maybe the parent company just wants to know the information for each company. It doesn't want to know like the location level information. Okay. So what do we do? What do we do for this? So in the segment rules, when we're defining the segment rules, we can just tell Oracle that for this division segment, because we are not going to be mapping any information to this division segment, because these two are the only ones we want, right? And we don't want to convert this location level information. So when we get to this segment, then we tell Oracle to use single value rule, and we can tell Oracle that for this segment here, the division, just put in 00, just use 00. Okay. So we are not getting anything here from the subsidiary, so just use 00. And since that will be the same for all the other segments, then we have to define segment rules that equal the number of segments in the parent company. Then we just use the single value rule for the rest of the segments. So we can just fill them up with 00 for all of them. Okay. And once we do that, we will have accomplished our segment rules chart of accounts mapping. So here we have another rule, type of segment rule, which is called copy value from rule. Although we are not going to be using it for our example, how do we do copy value from rule? So this kind of segment rule, it can be used when the value sets are the same. What do I mean by that? It means the values in the value sets are similar for a particular segment. Okay. So assume that this, instead of being location, was department. Okay. And the values here were the same as the values here for the parent and the subsidiary. Okay. So you can just tell Oracle when it comes to this segment in the department, copy those values from this segment here. Okay. So whatever is in the subsidiary, just copy it to the parent, because those values are the same. So those are the three kind of rules. We're only going to use two of them, the roll up and the single value. So what is the difference apart from the obvious way in which we implement them? Segment rules is much easier to implement, because for segment rules you're only dealing with the values in the segment. Okay, you're not dealing with combinations. For combinations, you have to deal with as many as uh, combinations as they are, as is the product of all the values in each segment. That is the number of combinations that you have to deal with. That is a lot of work that you have to do. But for segment rules, you just deal uh, with the data per segment. Okay, so you define the mapping segment to segment, which makes your work much easier compared to account rules. Okay, but apart from that, uh, that is how you do both the segments rule and the account rules mapping. So this is the navigation. This is the navigation for segment rules. So I'm going to show you on the system what this screen looks like. So we're going to go to setup. Where is it? Accounts. Don't know whether I'm already logged out. So let's see whether this works. Setup. Accounts. Then chart of accounts mapping. Yeah, I need to log in. Let me log in. That's okay. So here is where you define your mapping. Okay. So you enter the name. You enter the name of the mapping. So here we can call it Itaú Enterprise to Maskani. Put in the description. So let's start. Itaú Enterprise to Maskani, and we can put that as the description. Okay, and then the target, it will be the Maskani COA, right, that we created, and the source will be the Itaú COA. Okay, and we can save that. So that's just the mapping that we have created. We haven't defined the account rules and the segment rules. Okay, so I just want to show you the screen. We're not going to enter the values right now. I'm going to show you, I'm going to explain something else. So for example, for account rules, we are going to come here. Here we put in the source accounts. So when we click here, we are going to be able to enter the source accounts. Okay, and then here we are going to enter the target account for which is in the parent chart of accounts. Okay, so that's how we do account rules. When we do segment rules, we do it for every segment. Okay, so if you check here, you will see that you have the segments in the Maskani group chart of accounts. Okay, then in between here you have the rules that I just told you. So we have the copy value, and then we have the single value, and you have roll up. Okay, so for example, for the company segment, we're going to use roll up, and then now we come and select that we are rolling up to the corporation segment. Okay, now once we do that, we come here and we select the values. Okay, so we are going, we still have to create the additional values which we are going to map using segment rule. So that's why I don't want to enter these values right now. So I just want to show you the screen. Okay, so this is what the screen looks like, and we are going to look at it later. But we have already created the chart of accounts mapping. So what I wanted to do right now is, let's go to setup, financials. Just wanted to do an explanation of how we are going to do this. So for these are the values in Gitao chart of accounts. Okay, so you have Gitao hardware, Gitao builders, Gitao architect, and Gitao interiors. So we are going to create three corresponding values in the parent chart of account. So we are going to have Gitao hardware, we're going to have Gitao builders, and then we are going to roll up these two, Gitao architects and Gitao interiors. We're going to roll them up into one. We can call them Gitao designs. Okay, so it's the same concept. I actually have a parent value here using the same idea, but that's how we are going to do it for the consolidation. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that. Of course, we are going to roll up the values in the natural account to the appropriate value in the parent chart of accounts, and then we're not going to do anything with this. So for the remaining segments in the parent chart of accounts, we are going to use the assign single value rule. Okay, so what do we need to do? What else do we need to do before we do our mapping and data transfer? We need to do translation, or we need to do the transfer from a reporting currencies ledger. Okay, so I have already created a reporting currencies ledger for Gitao enterprises, and we are going to do the transfer from there. All right, and then we are going to do the remaining part, which is we are going to define the consolidation for account rules mapping, and what the definition for what the consolidation definition is it links ledgers, the ledger to the ledger. The consolidation chart of accounts mapping, it links the chart of accounts to another chart of accounts. But the consolidation definition, it links the ledger to the subsidiary ledger to a primary ledger. Okay, so I just wanted to give you an introduction of what we are going to be doing. You're going to see how we are going to do all this in the system, and we are going to do consolidation with both account rules and segment rules. But we are going to save that for our next lesson, which is going to be the practicals lesson for consolidation. But now what you have understood, you should know by now, is how to do account rules, chart of accounts mapping, and how to do segment rules and the differences between them. Okay. But Bob, unless you have something to add, that's a good place to end our lesson today.
Thank you, Victor.
Thank you.